Jess, it's great to finally meet you here over the video.
Thanks, Steve. So good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I've been following you on Twitter for quite a while and enjoying your tweets, and it's nice that we get a chance here to talk, even though it is via the Zoom here. But this will be a lot of fun having a conversation with you.
Yeah, world's used to Zoom, so I appreciate the invite, and we'll meet here until we can meet in person.
That's right. Well,
Mhm.
I'm going to do something a little bit different today from my typical podcast, and that is that I'm going to go through your story, have you go through your story in a chronological order. And
Okay.
usually I try and find a point in a story that really makes the most sense. But I think in your case, it really makes sense to sort of walk through your situation, your story from a chronological standpoint, because I think each chapter in your life up to this point is really built upon they've each
Yeah,
built upon each other. So I think
yeah,
it's a good way to really tell your story. So let's go back to college. And as I understand it, you got
yeah.
a degree in psychology. So what made you
Good.
want to study psychology in college?
I just loved it, and the I went to school at Berry College in Rome, Georgia, and wasn't on my list of places in the beginning, but my dad was like, "Let's just visit. Let's try, let's check it out." And as soon as we drove onto the campus, I fell in love. And it's a beautiful campus. It's actually the world's largest campus. And when I went in as actually pre-vet, so that was kind of like one of the things I was using to help cipher out which colleges I wanted to go to, and it had a program there, and got into it and just realized like I'm good at science, but I am not passionate about science. And that's just not going to carry me through this life that I know I have ahead of me. And I took my first psychology class, had the most incredible professor, and he was passionate about it. And I think that bled over into me and gave me a love for learning more about people and what they do and why they do those things that they do. And that's just I just dug in. I loved studying it and just never really stopped loving it.
And is there anything that sticks out from what you learned in college? Because now I'm going to flash forward to today. You're a
Yeah.
financial advisor. You're a VP of brand partnerships at Alpha Architects. So as I just said, we're going to go chronologically. Now I'm just going to skip ahead for a second.
You're
But
good.
anything that you picked up in psychology that you are applying today in your work?
Yes, and it's one of those things that, as we go through our story, like, it's applied to every part of my life. It's something that I'm thankful for as a skill. It wasn't necessarily a good building block for a career, specifically, in order for me to explore that career as in psychology. I needed a lot more school and was not willing to do that at the time. But um, the the flash forward to today is, I think, probably the most resonant one is my coworkers. I drive them crazy with the amount of times that I come back to them and say, okay, but what is somebody going to feel when they read this? What is somebody going to feel when they see this? It's always coming back to, I know we work with advisors and advisors are smart. I get it, but advisors are are feeling people who sometimes think just like every other human on the face of the earth. And so the first thing they're going to do when they see or receive something from us is they're going to feel about it. And then they're going to think about it. They don't recognize that they're doing that, but we need to capture and be, if we can capture that, if we can be aware of that, if we can be a step ahead on that, then we get a lot more opportunity to then have a thinking discussion with them, because work with clients, they're always about thinking. And so they came in ready to receive this from me, but I'm probably a little heavier than they expected.
Well,
So yeah.
it's interesting you should mention this thinking and feeling thing, because I just had a podcast yesterday and we were talking about some of the research from Antonio Damasio, who is one of the folks who has done a lot of research in that area, talking
Yeah.
about the difference between emotions and feelings, and basically an emotion. And he makes a distinction between the two, whereas a lot of
Yeah.
people will use those two words interchangeably. But the way that he thinks about it, and based on his research, he says that the emotion is when we're in a situation, our body is going to react to something before we
Mhm.
can consciously recognize it. For example, I'm walking in the woods and all of a sudden I see a rattlesnake. Okay, well, my body is going to feel that emotion first, and then the feeling is going to come in when I rely on pattern recognition.
Yeah.
And I think back to past patterns where maybe I have a situation that I can imagine what this should feel like. And then that's when the feeling comes in, and the feeling causes me to then take action.
Mm.
And so when you talk about,
Interesting. Yeah.
we're feeling people first, we're going to feel something, and then we're going to take action. I mean, that's the order that these things are actually happening. And so psychology certainly comes into play often
Yeah.
as financial professionals, because we're dealing with money. Like, as we're talking today, the markets are not in a good place these days, and
Yeah.
clients are not happy about it, and they're having strong feelings about it. And so having an understanding of psychology, of course, is a great skill to have as a financial advisor.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And there's a lot of folks in the industry that I've connected with that specifically are in that field, like Carl Richards and Daniel Crosby, Brian Portnoy. And I'm thankful to have, because I know we mentioned a little bit before we were talking, like you look for areas outside of the industry that you can bring in. And that's just something that I'm really grateful to have found here, is a welcome place for behavior and psychology in finance. And that's one of the things that's endeared me to it,
Mhm.
truly. So,
Yeah, so you get the degree in psychology, you're coming out of college. Now, how are you going to put food on the table with the
all right.
psychology degree?
How am I going to put food on the table? Well, the truth is, at the time, I thought I was going to put food on the table by marrying into someone who was going to put food on the table. And it's funny. Sonia Dreisler posted on Twitter yesterday a question of, if you went back to your 21-year-old self, what would you tell her? And that's probably the most poignant thing that I'm feeling now, and that I wish I had known then, is that I'm responsible for my own financial independence and my own financial health. And it's not something that, and people feel differently about this, think differently about this, both of those things. But for me, two financially strong, independent people can build a life together much more successfully than people who depend on each other to have that financial strength and that financial stability. So I mean, the short answer is I thought I would contribute to the household, and that would, I would would raise babies and contribute to the household in the ways that I could. And that is pretty much how I treated my career for um, easily 15 years. Yeah, almost 15 years. So, yeah. And that
All
is
right.
how I
And
put food on the table.
yeah. And then so you get a job. I mean, what industry what was like the first job coming out of college?
I did. I did know people, and I think this is so true. It's not what you know, it's who you know when it comes to your opportunities in your career and in jobs. So I thankfully found opportunities everywhere I looked because of people that I knew. And so I had interned at a church while I was in college. Coming out of college, they offered me a job in the children's ministry. So I worked there for several years, and then met a family who had a child with developmental disabilities. And so that ended up being something that I really believe I would have gone into full time. I'd started my master's in applied behavior analysis. I was working with several families a few years in after I met them and started working with their daughter. I was super passionate about it. I loved seeing how, one thing like, feeding yourself with a fork could be so challenging and yet so possible to teach someone to do if they didn't understand that skill um, mentally or physically. You could still teach it, break it down into maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different steps. Of you got to teach them how to hold a fork, right? You got to teach them where the fork goes, and there's so many different pieces of that. It's not just put a fork in their hand, hold their hand, and help them do it. There's so much, and so that became something I was really passionate about. Is that anybody anybody is capable of a skill. Anyone. One, do they need it? If they don't need it, then they're probably not going to be passionate about it. If they don't need it, but they are passionate about it, that's still something we can build on. And three, like the rest of it is on me. Like, how do I make it approachable for them? How do I make it, um, break it down into enough steps that each step is doable? How do I make it sustainable over the long term for them? Like, that's on me as the teacher, as the coach, as the mentor, whatever it is, then, the role that I'm playing with them. And so I learned that. I started my master's in that. I found out I was pregnant with my first in about a year into my master's, and it was just the road ahead. I knew at that time, like I said, I thought my role in the family wasn't to pursue a master's and a PhD and go down this career road. I knew, and I thought, and I'm not wrong in that, but there was just a lot of imbalances there. I pulled out of my master's program and put my focus 100% on raising kids and then finding like little jobs here and there to be able to support what we needed for the home. So um, that was kind of the progression through psychology. And I had a role a little bit after she was born in in a foster care placement facility where I was helping children find a home. That was actually under WinShape, which is Chick-fil-A's one of Chick-fil-A's nonprofits. So I worked directly with Truett Cathy. That was a highlight of my life. Super humble, gentle, tiny man that just had a passion for creating things that people would love, and then also had a passion for children and helping them find a home. And so he hired out 12 different foster parents, built the homes for them, gave them the budget that they needed to be able to bring children into the home and raise them. And so that was a couple of years I did that before I found CrossFit. Yeah.
Yeah. So CrossFit. So
Yeah.
just tell me the connection from where you were to getting heavily into CrossFit. What was the bridge between where you were to CrossFit?
So throughout, not most of that time, but at least half of that time, I had my the one kid, the one girl, the baby that we had. And I had her about halfway through working with the families, doing applied behavior analysis. And then moved into this role at WinShape. Throughout that time, I expected, again, I'm supporting the financial need of my family, but my role here is mom. I am the baby maker for however many years we have ahead of us of baby making. And so um, eh, that came that shifted really quickly about 2 years in, whenever I got pregnant with our second. And then 16 weeks into that pregnancy, I had a completely unanticipated miscarriage. Well, it was a miscarriage, but I went in for an ultrasound because I had changed doctors and they wanted to just check in on things as a new doctor. And they couldn't find a heartbeat. And I was 16 weeks along. And so that was that was a blow from like a left field, like even further than that. Like it was something that I never expected to ever deal with ever in my life, and it threw me completely off my center. And so one of the ways that I dealt with that after going through pretty serious, because I had another miscarriage, we didn't know what was going on. But one of the ways that I dealt with that was fitness. I was just trying to find something that I ran. I started training for marathons for a while. Don't tell anybody because I'm not a runner. And but I tried to get into that. And then I found this kettlebell class that I loved, but it was so intense. It was just kettlebells. It was just every time I went, I knew I was going to be staring at kettlebells. And then eventually I found CrossFit. And when I found CrossFit, I had no idea that I was going to love it, but somebody put a barbell in my hands and I was like, this is it. I'm in love. I love this. It was also the lots of different things that you could always be practicing. And then that aspect of everything is doable. The skills are doable. You just got to break it down into a million pieces. So that really resonated with me as well. And so CrossFit was something that I found because I was like trying to figure out how to deal with this dark place that having that miscarriage had introduced to me, like a loss and a sadness and a grieving that I had just never experienced before. And all of these kind of things that I was trying to fill it with, CrossFit became the thing that finally gave me some. It connected with me in a place so deeply and gave me something to just really work toward and in a positive way and find my strength again. I think that was something that, when I got knocked off center, it was just like, I don't even know how to be myself. I don't even know how to be strong. I don't know how to deal with this. I have a 2-year-old, 3-year-old during this time that needs me. And man, it was a lot. It was a lot. But CrossFit was the first thing that felt like it was filling some of those missing pieces in me. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you being so open and sharing. And I can't even begin to imagine how difficult that period was to not only lose one, but
Yeah.
to lose two children. And so, yeah, I appreciate you being open with that.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
also, as far as, you know, a tragedy like that oftentimes is a catalyst for change. And I think in your case, it was clearly a catalyst for you to change. How do you think about looking back on how you thought of yourself, your self image, your identity prior to that happening? And then maybe fast forward a few months, 6 months, a year, as you started really getting into CrossFit. Did your view of how you viewed yourself, your self image, how did that evolve and change over time during that period?
Ooh, um, so much, and it still changes because of CrossFit. And I'd mentioned that who I thought I needed to be in this world, and like the roles that I felt like I needed to assume, either through just my upbringing or the influences that I'd had around me to that point. I'm from the South, so it's a pretty traditional kind of Southern um, approach to family. And um, I, so I talk about this all the time with my clients now when I'm working with someone. Is I just I just gave permission to all of those ideas to live inside me, to be mine, without even thinking about whether or not they were ideas or values that I agreed with. And so during this time of wrestling, one of the hardest parts was all these new voices that kind of ushered in with this dark season of my life that I'd never experienced before. Uh, my my default was just to give permission to those things to live inside me. But the more that I allowed those to live inside me, the worse I felt, right? And so then something inside of me was like, girl, you got to fight. Like you have to fight. You have to make it through this, like whatever this dark void is. We've got to figure out a way through. And the way through that was to start learning my own strength. And then once I like realized there's possibility for it, to start believing that it was mine and it wasn't something that someone else had given to me. It wasn't something that I needed someone else to give me permission to have. It wasn't something else that I needed to lean into someone else in order to have some strength of my own. Like me, myself, just I, by myself, Jess Bost, I have strength. It's inside of me and I get to have as much as I want because it's mine to create and to have. And that was something that definitely grew and evolved with barbell training. But alongside of that, it was growing and evolving in me as a person, as a human, in my heart, in my belief, in my mind of who I am and who I was and what I was capable of. And it was almost just like the physical realm of moving this barbell and it getting heavier and me being able to do that translated into this psychological realm of I'm getting stronger. I can do this. I'm capable of this. And, just it's not just that coming out of that dark place. It's been a part of my last 13 years. The journey of this last 13 years has been like just every day, better every day, just a little bit more every day. And sometimes, we experience those seasons where for whatever reason, we can't lift as much. Either we're hurt or we just don't get to go into the gym as often. And so it's almost, it cycles a little bit, but there's still, there's the seasons of that fitness. And then it gives me some staying power for the seasons of my life. Like, it's okay if things aren't really gelling right now. This is just a different season, and it's going to be back to the summer again. It's going to be back to the spring. Things are going to grow. Things are going to change. Things are going to be good again. But right now, we're either here, we're learning something, and so those parallels that I've found, because maybe where I started, there was an immediate need for a parallel. I don't know, but along the way, I've just pulled from the strength that I've found in the gym and kind of pulled that over to real life, whether it's career or family or just me growing as a person. It's been there along the way.
Well, you really touched on some interesting points there. And one of them is you talked about how the culture that you grew up in, a Southern culture, and I'm going to stereotype a little bit based on what you said there,
Yeah.
in terms of, a woman has a role, a woman is the mother, a woman raises the kids, takes care of the household, and not necessarily going to be career oriented. Again, I'm just stereotyping. I
Yeah.
don't want to
Yeah.
upset anybody about that, but
No.
um, and yet you had this tragedy that happened to you, and it caused you, I think, to reevaluate everything that you thought you believed, and that environment, that culture, the people that you were around. And I think you said this. You said, I basically just grew up believing what my environment was. You didn't consciously choose
Right.
necessarily that kind of lifestyle. It's just that's what I know because that's what I'm surrounded by. And so I guess that's what I do. And it wasn't until you had a very difficult situation happen that you were able to consciously challenge that and
Yeah.
ask myself, is this
Yeah.
really what I want?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask a hypothetical question here. And the question is, do you think that had you not had the miscarriage in the second one, do you think you would have challenged what you were growing up in? Or do you think you would have been happy living that kind of life that you were essentially born into?
I don't know that I would have been happy. So I'll put that out there. um, and that's, I had a fun debate with folks. Not really a debate. I just put it out there for discussion the other day on Twitter about whether everything has a purpose. Um, and some good feedback on that was that we ascribe purpose to things, and we need to because we need to make it part. We need to make it reasonable as an experience. Like the experience has to have a purpose for us in order for us to not go crazy in our head of why this happened to me. So we ascribe a purpose to it. We give it meaning. And so um, I I appreciated that little bit of feedback because it it definitely gave me a framework for why I'm thankful for the things that I've been through, and that it's okay to be thankful for those things. It's okay to ascribe some sort of purpose to those because then it gives those things meaning for me, value for that part of the journey. Um, do I wish that I could be where I am today with all four of my babies? Absolutely. I would never, ever, ever wish for anything different in that way. but it propelled me and forced me into considering some of those narratives. And without that, I wouldn't have, without something else similar to that, I wouldn't have had a reason to. Um, and I don't know if I would have found CrossFit in the same way. I might have tried it eventually, but it wouldn't have been as meaningful, and it wouldn't have been something that I derive a lot of ideas and use to create systems for thinking that I do now, had I not found it in that place. And so, no, I don't think I would be the same person I am today. Uh, and I don't know that that means I would have been happy.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I see that a lot in that a terrible tragedy is often the catalyst for change. And in your
mhm.
situation, it was a catalyst for change. And I often see too that these structures that we're in, again, getting back to your situation of growing up in the South and having certain cultural expectations of what it's like to be a woman in the South, a mother in the South, is it's hard to break. And
Mhm.
unless there's something significant that happens that really forces you to have to reevaluate everything that you thought was true, you're typically going to go along
Oh yeah.
with how things are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it takes that difficult thing. And I just had a conversation yesterday with Sarah Carlson, and this will be a podcast coming out on my Barron's Advisor show. She had a very similar, not your circumstance, but she had another tragic situation happen in her life where she got run over by a car, a purposeful hit and run,
Oh wow.
and she had like 40 broken bones, couldn't walk, had 11 operations, and I don't want to give away the whole story, but she said my immediate reaction when that happened, and as I felt myself flying through the air as I got hit, she said I was a skier and I knew how to land. And so she was an athlete and she had done some other athletic stuff as well. So she's telling herself while she's hit and while she's flying in the air, she is conscious enough to tell herself, I know how to do this. I know how to protect myself so that when I land, I'm not going to get too hurt. And so she did. And that, of course, was a major catalyst for change in her life because where she was in her life at that time wasn't as happy as she wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And coming out of that, she discovered who really cared for her and who didn't necessarily really care for her. And so
Yeah.
she made major changes in her life. And now she's got a great new book called Facing Financial Fears. So
Mm,
I
cool.
always find it fascinating to talk to people like you and to talk to people like Sarah that have been through these traumatic experiences and just how it changes you and how it becomes a
Yeah.
catalyst for, living every moment and being grateful. And that was the one word she said as she got hit. She said, I felt gratitude. And it's like, what? How can you feel gratitude? You're getting run over by a car. It's just, I just was at a place of peace. And I just
Huh.
love hearing those kinds of stories.
Hmm. Yeah. It doesn't just change you. It becomes like part of you, right? Like that experience marks you and lives with you and informs you from that moment forward. And
Yeah, one
yeah.
other thing I want to touch on here that you just said as it relates to CrossFit is you said had your situation not happened and you discovered CrossFit, you probably wouldn't have discovered CrossFit in the same way. It wouldn't have been meaningful to you in the same way that it was after having the miscarriage. Can you describe what CrossFit means to you and how did you discover CrossFit at that low point in your life?
Mm.
And what need was it filling for you at that time? And maybe I know a little bit about CrossFit. I've never done CrossFit. So maybe just give a very brief description of what CrossFit is in case there's
Sure.
anyone out there that doesn't know what it is. And then just describe what need was that filling for you at that moment in your life?
Sure. Uh, so CrossFit is high intensity, constantly varied functional fitness. Um, and what that means, those 3 pieces is the belief behind CrossFit is that you when you are doing a workout, you are working at a high intensity. Now that means relative to you. So every person's intensity is different than another person. One person's intensity is different than another person's, but relative to you, when you are working out, you should feel like the workout is relatively intense. Constantly varied is a description of how how they program workouts so that your body doesn't come in already prepared. So our mind does so much for us, right? When we are in any situation, but especially when we're in a situation where we're challenging ourselves to another level, like you are frequently in a gym, you can mentally prepare yourself for what you're capable of. And so this idea of constantly varied is a way to almost trick people into improving and give them not just that, but a broad base of fitness. So you are improving your cardio, you're improving your body weight, gymnastic ability to move your body in space. You're improving your strength, either through barbells or kettlebells or weighted balls or whatever it is that we're using for that day. And you're in all different sorts of planes. So that constantly varied piece has a couple of different functions. And then functional fitness just means we want you to be moving and improving in a way that applies to real life. So, especially, I find this super relevant to when I'm working with uh, people who are 50, 60, 70, 80, as their body starts to age and things become a little more challenging in ways that either they anticipated or didn't. Or if somebody comes in with an injury from a car accident or something like that, like we want you to be stronger in ways that make your life better, not just strength for strength. And so that's CrossFit, and I obviously believe in it wholeheartedly, love it, and have seen it change the lives of many people, not just mine. But in with regards to what it did for me, and how you know how it was different then than it would have been had I not been in that same place. Um, the the thing that people sometimes ascribe to CrossFit is this kind of cultish, addictive aspect of it. And for a while, and maybe even still a little bit, it was very popular. Like it was the cool thing to do to try. And when I got in on it, it was prior to it being a cool thing. It was just starting to emerge. And, you know, I wasn't doing it because it was trendy. I wasn't doing it because I thought I needed a place to belong for fitness. I didn't need a cult fitness trend to participate in. I just needed something that would help me find myself again because I just felt lost. And so the the motivation for being there was something I would probably say closer to desperation, as opposed to interest. Like this might be entertaining, this might be fun, this might be interesting to do. And so the way that I connected with it uh, in that dark place that I was in, one, I was about 30 pounds overweight, and nothing really helped except eating whatever I wanted when I wanted it, sweets or whatnot. And so the thing about CrossFit is when you eat that and then you go work out at intensity, you feel really terrible. So, it has this almost silent effect on your nutrition because you want to feel good when you're working out intensely. And in order to do that, you have to at least somewhat care about what you eat. And, or I did at least. And so that kind of had this overall effect on my life of just cleaning up all areas of my health. And that addictive piece to it filled the need that I might have otherwise been filling with alcohol on more than a 2 a week occasion, right? So it was this place that I could go and um, and the things that I was trying to run away from in life, and also the things I was doing to try to self-satisfy, like feel good. I could go to CrossFit, and instead of running away from my problems, I felt like I was building strength to attack my problems. And instead of, trying to use food or alcohol or whatever to feel good, I could go there and like after a workout, like I didn't feel there's nothing that felt better than the way that I felt after a workout. And the improvements that I was making, because one of the things I love about CrossFit is you can see yourself improving, and feel yourself improving in workouts. And so that was something that was just really encouraging to me because it didn't really feel like anything else in my life was improving much. I just felt stuck in this dark place. And so it's like, okay, I'm climbing out of this dark place while I'm climbing, out of my place of not being very fit. And it was just these parallels. And so I think if I had tried CrossFit not in that place, it would have been um, something that I see in folks a lot where they're interested, but maybe they're not very good at it when they come in. There's a lot of humility that you have to assume sometimes when you come in, and the barbell is just the barbell, and it's heavy. And other people in the room don't or have a heavier barbell, or other people in the room are doing more rounds than you, or whatever it is. And so it's just this like, okay, I thought this was going to be fun, but this sucks because I'm not as good as them, and I feel that every time I come in the room. And or I can't do this, and I don't like coming in here and not being able to do something, or I don't like the way that I don't like being sore all the time, or I don't like it makes my elbows or my knees hurt or something. And so that would have been a lot easier to pay attention to, I think, if I had not been in the place that I was in, where it was solving a problem and filling a need for me. So
And you've been doing CrossFit for how many years now?
coming up on 13. So
13. Okay. And
yeah,
I think you were a coach for most of those, if not pretty much all of those
pretty
years. And are you
much.
still coaching CrossFit?
Mhm.
Okay.
I do.
So I think there's also a potential that when you are coming out of a dark place, as you've described, that we can get into something else on an obsessive basis. So you mentioned you could have become an alcoholic. Instead
Yeah.
of a couple social drinks a week, I could be drinking every night.
Mhm.
And that might be a way to try and get out of the dark place, which obviously would not have been a good way to do that.
Right.
Did you ever feel like you were getting so deep into CrossFit that maybe it was becoming an unhealthy obsession, or has it always been this has been a healthy outlet for me, and I've kept it in perspective, and it's done exactly for me what I needed at that point in my life?
No, I've definitely been in the unhealthy CrossFit space. And it it didn't appear in the same way that it didn't present itself as unhealthy. Because you're doing a healthy thing, right? Your body's getting stronger and you're eating right and all of these things. But what I realized was eventually, um, I would because I got into a pattern. One of the things I loved about CrossFit is I could go there, and when workouts were hard, I could just let them be hard, and I could just go into my dark place, and I could just battle with all my demons in the middle of a workout, and I could just hate everything for 20 minutes if I wanted to, right? And all the things that I was trying to or struggling with, or, even past the point where I had, kind of really come out of that dark place and into, I eventually I got pregnant again. We had another baby, like, so we have 2 girls now, and it's just the even after that, right? So, like, life had changed a lot. A lot of what I had been hoping and wanting had come true, but I was still on a bad day going to the gym and just, kind of punching the wall with as much anger or resentment or anything that I had with it. And um, especially parts of the workout, like if there was the assault bike or the air bike, like I just hated that thing, right? Um, or if there were thrusters, I just hate thrusters. It's just the movements that I would just really have more of a negative spirit inside my workout than a healthy, rejuvenating, like strengthening spirit. And so I tried to compete. Like I was on this kind of competitive route where we would go, travel pretty locally and compete. I was never destined for the regionals or anything, even close to the CrossFit Games, but I would compete locally. And so I was always watching, right, these games athletes. Like, what is different about them? Like, I know I'm not that level, but why am I not that level? What is different about them? And what started to emerge for me uh, is how happy, like, or how joyful they looked in the middle of these same workouts that if I were doing, I would just be so angry about, or just so upset in the middle of it, or just I would feel so many bad emotions, like in the middle of a workout, or I would look at them. It's like they're doing things that I know how hard they are. I can't fathom how hard they are at that pace or at that weight, but they're doing them with a freaking smile on their face. Why? How? What's different? Is that maybe something that they have that I don't? Not that that'll be the thing that gets me to be a games competitor, but what is that? Like, how do they have that? And then I would notice like most of the games competitors that I respected had that. So composure, even after a workout, to stand there and just talk about how fun that was. Like, what? And so I started paying attention to that. And then I don't know where I got the idea. I was just like, you know what? I decided to put all of my attention on the bike. And I was like, I'm just gonna love this bike. When I walk up to the bike from now on, I'm just gonna tell it how much I love it. The whole time that I'm on that bike, I'm biking, I'm thinking about how much I love this bike. I'm so grateful for this bike. I'm so glad that I'm on this bike right now. This bike is the best. And as stupid as that sounded, it became one of the biggest, most important pieces of my journey because it carried me from using CrossFit as a way to um, go to the dark place and transformed it into something that I used as a lens for gratitude, like as a lens for appreciation for what my body can do, as a lens for respect for what my body is capable of. And that took me from a place where I probably would have ended up very hurt by CrossFit somehow, um, just continuing to like battle to that next level and like, I can do this and why can't I do this? And I got this. And I'm, ego being a big feeder of all of that energy into again, just more humility, more respect, more what is my body capable of this day, more gratitude for, wow, thank you, body, for getting me through those 30 pull-ups in the workout today. I'm really proud that that I stepped up and I was able to do that. And the space for if my body couldn't do pull-ups that day, doing ring rows, knowing that like is still something that my body's capable of, that other people's bodies are not capable of, and just being thankful for that and giving myself the space to meet myself where I'm at for that day. And And that has transformed workouts into something that is more sustainable for the long term and more enjoyable in the short term. And when people talk about doing something for a goal for a specific reason versus falling in love with the process toward that goal, like I understand exactly the difference in those two things, where I was using CrossFit as a means to an end, versus using, like, going to my workouts and appreciating and enjoying that workout for that day, for that moment, for what I was capable of, and for where, I started, where I finished, and how it fits into the grand scheme of my fitness and my health. So, yeah, big, big change.
Well, Jess, this conversation is such a gift because what you are talking about here and just your ability to articulate your journey and how you've evolved and changed over time as a result of the dark situation that you had to gone through is just off the charts here. So I really
Thanks.
appreciate you how
Thanks.
you're able to describe all of this. And I just loved listening to what you were just describing there about how you had a shift here in terms of how you approach CrossFit. And when you looked at these other CrossFit competitors who were super at the high end of CrossFit and how they were smiling through their workouts. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about when you
Mhm.
describe that and how you said you were using initially CrossFit as a means to an end, but then you made that shift and said, instead of doing this because I feel like I have to work out my demons. I have to throw that kettlebell against the wall. I got to punch that bag as hard as I can because I got to get this stuff out of me.
Mhm.
You've made that shift. And now
Mhm.
it's like, I'm grateful that I've got a body and I've got an ability to do these things. And what a gift this is.
Mhm.
And when you look at those competitors who are doing these tough workouts and they're smiling, they're at the same place. And,
They
and
are.
I mean, something similar to me happened just a few days ago. We were out in Oregon visiting one of our kids, and we went to a hot yoga class. So I do hot yoga where I live here, but
Yeah.
it's a vinyasa flow class. And so it's really serene
Yeah.
music and, it's good movement and everything. And it's super hot and I'm sweating like crazy. But we go to this hot yoga class and it's a high intensity, um, we're doing all kinds of stuff. I mean, we're sliding around, we're punching stuff in the air, we're jumping up and down, we're doing burpees, and we're doing
Oh.
some yoga poses and everything. And the teacher is super high energy and really loud hip hop music going on. I'm like, well, this is a lot different than what I'm used to. So we're about 3/4 of the way through and we're doing push-ups. And I look at my daughter, she's next to me, she's sweating like crazy. I'm sweating like crazy. And I'm like, and I start smiling and I give her a big old grin. And then I start doing push-ups with rotation with one arm. And she's like, Dad, you're crushing it. You're crushing it. And it's like, I was having so much fun. And even though, and I remember the teacher, she was, as we were holding planks and she's like, 30 more seconds, 30 more, she's kind of down 20 more seconds, 20 more seconds. And I'm like, I'm consciously thinking to myself, I'm just going to smile through this whole thing here. And even though I was just raining sweat at that point, and I'm like, I'm going to have fun. And,
That's
and, and
right.
so I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about. And it's just a
that's
great
it.
place to get to. And I think the other quick thing, and I don't want to hog the conversation here, but
Yeah.
when people, I work out all the time, and people that have listened to my podcast in the past, they know that I work out essentially every single day. And I don't do that because I have such great discipline. I don't do that because I force myself to work out. I do that because that's like who I am. And it's like
Yeah.
I look forward to working out. I mean, I
Yeah.
work out with a smile on my face, essentially, like you're describing. And I think that concept applies whether we're talking about fitness, whether we're talking about our careers, whether we're talking about
Mhm.
our relationships. It's just how we approach all of that and how we view that, not as something that we have to do, but as
Yeah.
something that we want to do. And I
Want
think
to
when we
do
can make that shift, life is so much better.
so much better. So much better. I mean, yes, like you captured it perfectly. Like you said back to me exactly what I was trying to say. So
Yeah,
that
what you were
makes me
saying.
happy.
Yeah.
You got it. Um, yeah. And that it's what's funny that movie Monsters Inc., the whole first 3/4 of the movie, maybe even a little bit more, is them trying to scare children in order to capture energy. So the screams of children is what powered the monster world, right? That was the energy that they needed to try to capture, they scare children. While they're scaring them, they capture all this energy in this vessel, and the vessel is what they use to power the city. And you've got a monster who's just like, I just don't have to, like, I just hate this. Like, I hate scaring children. I just want to have fun with them. And he accidentally discovers that making a child giggle, like, it blows all the circuits in the building that they're in, because this kid's around. So it makes this kid giggle. It blows everything. Whole lights, power goes off, everything. The whole city shuts down. And he recognizes that laughter is so much more powerful than fear. And in that movie, like, I loved it, but once I put that in the context of life and just the power potential behind uh, enjoying what you're doing and finding joy in it. And even if you don't enjoy it, tricking yourself into saying it until you can truly appreciate the bike. And when I get on the bike now, I'm like, that is just, it's not even a hesitation for me. If I start to think, oh, this is, no, I love this. This is awesome. So thankful for this bike and for the training that I get from it. And the more automatic those kind of processes can be in our life, because we do them over and over again, then we can put our time and energy and focus on other things. But for a minute, it takes a lot of energy and focus to put our time, like, to put our effort into telling ourselves that something is wonderful, even when it's not. And the exercise that I've been doing most with that right now is nasal breathing. So it takes a lot of effort to not mouth breathe while I'm working out, and to nasal breathe instead, and stay, like, in a good place about it, because it feels a little bit scary sometimes to not be able to take that big mouth breath. But to talk yourself through that, to, you're okay. This is the right way to breathe. This is, good. Stay with your thoughts and really pay attention. And it's transformative. It's awesome. So all those little things that you can find and spend a little time and energy on, and then it becomes a little more automatic. And those are all the things that those high level athletes are doing automatically, because they just break it down and they work on it, and they turn it into something that they feel confident about and that they enjoy doing. And it, yeah, I love it. I love it. It transforms for me. Those things transform over to real life in such an easy way.
Yeah, and I love how you talked about this fuel source, and as you give the example of the Monsters Inc. movie, where what is your fuel source? Is
Mhm.
it the fear? Is that what's driving you? Is that what's motivating you? And it sounds like early on with CrossFit, not maybe the fear, the
The
frustration, the
pain.
anger, the why me, the pain.
Mhm.
That's a negative energy source essentially. And then over time, you described how you were able to shift that to more of a positive energy source. And that's the one that's enduring. That's the one that's
Yes.
sustaining.
Yes.
And yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
I love how you describe that. Another thing I want to touch on here, I think we've been dancing around it a little bit, which is this idea of mastery. And
Mm.
you were touching on it as you were describing those CrossFit athletes who were just smiling through the toughest workouts. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you think about the concept of mastery as it relates to what you do, let's say in your CrossFit and your health routines, as well as maybe just in life in general, how you think about mastery as it relates to you.
So I would love to talk about this. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. um, Greg Glassman, who's the founder of CrossFit, uh, aside from just the fact that he has some really wild personal views, had an incredible mind for helping people become fitter. And one of those things was, he found that group classes up to a certain point are actually more beneficial for folks than individual classes. That community group vibe of suffering together is actually spurs people on toward more fitness and toward better results than they were getting individually. Um, One of the other things that he talked about a lot was this concept called virtuosity, and that was his concept for mastery. And he has a whole article that he wrote on it. But essentially, the idea behind virtuosity is doing the common uncommonly well. So the things that seem to be so elementary are actually the things that if you can do those pieces exceptionally well, better than anyone else, those are the things that will score you the highest results, the highest rewards, the highest, um, you know, abilities in your fitness, but also, and again, translates over to other pieces of life. And he used the analogy of a gymnast. So, right, it's really almost impossible to get a perfect score of 10 as a gymnast. But how do you get there? So there's 3 different categories, and I'm gonna probably not remember these exactly right, but one is the difficulty of your routine, and one is I think the creativity of your routine, and then there's a third one out there. But he said, even if you have all of those 3 in place to the high and perform those at the highest level, you still don't get a perfect 10. Why? Because what they're looking for in those perfect 10 scores is someone who moves throughout their routine in the little ways that you almost wouldn't even notice. Like, how do they transition from being on the floor to standing? How do they hold their shoulders back? How, do they point their toes? How do they hold their chin or how are they moving at the most elementary levels of poise and of, you know, the of movement through their routine? Those are the things that cause someone to go, wow, that that was exceptional. That was a 10. It's not because they were more difficult than anybody else. It's because of the way that they executed that difficulty. And so that idea of mastery in CrossFit, he pulled that over to say, hey, like, you aren't going to be great at snatching until you're great at deadlifting, until you're not going to be great at cleaning into a squat until you're great at squatting. And you're not going to be great at squatting until you know how to do that with your chest up, your shoulders back, and your elbows high, and your knees out, and your feet flat on the ground. Like, there's so many different pieces of this movement that you have to be able to do exceptionally well in order for you to continue to get stronger and stronger and stronger in these sexier, stronger, or harder, more difficult movements. It's not that you need to be better at the difficult movements. You need to be better at the basics. And so the basics are something that, I've always been trained in, and I always keep in mind when I'm looking at someone moving. I'm not looking at, how they're pulling the bar overhead. I'm looking at, is their whole foot on the ground, or are they bracing through the core? Do they get their shoulders, really tall in the movement? And it's those things, those elementary, those beginning pieces of the movement that we really, we really focus in on with folks whenever we're training them. And we consider that piece to be something mastered more than the sexier, heavier, even high intensity. I'm not interested in somebody going at relatively high intensity until they're moving well. And so we really continue to try to circle back to, are we moving in the correct patterns before we add any of these other elements to the workout. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned gymnastics. So one of my daughters was a high-level gymnast for many, many years and coached gymnastics as well. And
So
so
you see, you know
I've
this.
been to a lot of
Yeah.
gymnastics
Yeah.
meets over the years.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how you talk about, was the toe pointed? Was it at a slightly bent angle? And when they did a dismount, was there a slight hop when there was a dismount? So all these little things that might be imperceptible to my eye, the judges, they're looking out for that. And I love how you talked about just the getting back to the basics of the movements and essentially deconstructing the movements, and then how you assemble them all together in a way that looks rhythmic and that looks effortless. And I always think back to the Winter Olympics. I want to say it was 1992, maybe. Sarah Hughes was skating in the women's freestyle, and she ended up winning the gold medal. And if you get a chance, I'd encourage people to go back and watch the video of her final skate at those Olympics. And it was just magical in the
Yeah.
sense that she wasn't expected to win, but she was so full of life and energy. And you talked about, again, the CrossFit people, they got the smile on her face. She was so happy out on the ice, and it was just effortless, yet she was doing these crazy things for back in those days. And so I think of mastery like that, exactly how you're describing, with the focusing on the basics. But I am curious, as you think about mastery, oftentimes we'll think, okay, Tiger Woods in golf, or Michael Jordan in basketball, um, or some of these other great athletes. Do you have to be someone like that to be a master, or can I be a master at what I do at my level for an older guy here? Can we all be masters in certain ways? Is mastery a level? Is mastery an aspiration? How do you think about mastery in that standpoint?
That's a great question. And I mean, of course, we all had the Jordan series on the documentary. And I grew up hearing about how Michael Jordan and then Kobe Bryant, learning from him and taking on a lot of these same traits. Um, he out practiced everybody. He would stay behind and shoot 3-pointers. And that, I don't know if you've ever read the book. I have to think about the name of it. It's from Michael Jordan's trainer. So the trainer that he hired, he paid him to only be his trainer. So he paid him enough to never train anybody else. I only want you to be my trainer. And so he goes through this book and talks about what it took to be Michael Jordan, like what the difference is for someone like that. And I think it does require an obsession, and it requires an absolute channeling of all of your energy into one thing, um, and really not allowing any other things to take focus away from that one thing that you're wanting to do. So at that level, so mastery to me, like if you're kind of pulling some concepts from that, is more difficult for, I would say, the general population, because of all of the distractions that we either have or we allow, or of all the many roles that we are playing that we're trying to give time and effort and energy to. And, maybe even the lack of resources. Like, not everybody has the resources to hire one of the greatest trainers in the world and say, I'm going to pay you enough to not train anybody but me. And so if I think we do ourselves a disservice by trying to compare what our level of mastery looks like to someone at the professional level uh, would, would consider mastery. And I think on both levels, there's still people who professionally struggle to master their sport or whatever area of expertise they have because of all these other competing things for for their attention or their resources. And but that's definitely something that we can keep in mind if there's something that we do want to master or become a master of, recognizing the amount of intensity, intense focus, and the resources that you'll likely have to dedicate to that. And welcoming that instead of fighting that as a concept. So this book, I can't remember the name of it. It's compete. The fact that I'm trying to remember that name is competing for my attention right now. So I'll just have to send it to you later.
No, I've read. I know what you're talking about, and the name
Okay.
escapes me as well.
So it's such a good book. JP O'Shaughnessy, I think, tweeted about it the other day, as he had finished reading it, and it was just a fantastic book, just a really wild, eye-opening book about what it truly takes to dedicate yourself to being the master of something. And I was appreciative of that insight because it helped me realize, one, like I said, some things that we can pull from that and recognize that if I'm going to dig into, like, I've got to take the CFP. I've been putting it off for years now. I've got 2 classes I need to finish, and then I just need to take the test. But I've told myself I'm going to do it in March, like or February, March, the next test. And I just have to do it. And I know what it's going to, the part of the reason that I put it off is because I got my RSCP and I studied for my 7 and the 65 and 63 so it was just like test after test after test. And I knew the kind of dedication and focus that it would take. And I knew that it would take my time away from many of these other things that are also important to me. And I just have not been able to push myself back into that space where I'm going to dedicate time and energy and resources to finishing that out. I've committed to it, so I am, but that's the thing.
All right,
That's the next hurdle.
and I'm sure you will. And so I just looked it up. So Tim Grover is the guy that you're talking about here, and he's written several books. The one that I read was called Winning, and I read that. I listened to several podcasts where he was a guest, and I'm like, that's a tough guy. I mean, it's no surprise that people like Kobe and Michael Jordan were as good as they were when they had him riding them hard.
Right.
So,
Right.
and as we talk about mastery, I think there's mastery at that level. Obviously, the Jordans, those folks who are just operating on a totally different plane than the rest of us. For me personally, as I think about mastery, I think about, well, what can I do at my age with what my body allows me to do? How can I just get a little bit better? And I think you talked about this earlier as well. It's like, I'm going into the gym today. What can I do a little bit better? How can I point my toe a little bit straighter? How can I not take a hop when I do a landing? How can I keep my feet planted when I'm doing a clean and jerk or whatever it is? It's like, how can I just make those little improvements? And so to me, I think of mastery as this, I don't necessarily want to call it a game because I don't think of it as a game. I think of it as a way of life where I'm constantly trying to figure out, from where I'm at right now, how can I get a little bit better? I mean, I can't run as fast as I did when I was running in high school and college, but I can do different things. I can hike now, and I can hike for a long time. And so I can figure out, how can I continue to get better at hiking or climbing? So I think of mastery in a positive way of helping me keep me motivated and excited about getting a little bit better, even though I'm definitely getting older. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that line of thought as well.
Yeah. And it still, it still goes back to, if you're going to get better at hiking or continue to do that as you age, like, what shoes, what gear, what trails, the time that you give to that. It's still, there's only so many things in your life that you can dedicate the time, energy, and resources, other resources too, right? And so, in the gym, to even know that your toe needs to be straighter is something that you might have learned through watching a YouTube or searching up, some of your favorite athletes or watching videos that or reading articles. And so just knowing that, I think mastery, I think you're absolutely right. I think it is this continuous, just what do I do next? But to figure out what to do next and to get that next thing and to do that next thing all takes those resources. And you have to, I think it's important to recognize that you can only do that for so many things. And so if you feel like you're stuck and you're not mastering something in the way that you would like to, is it because there's too many other things on your plate that are keeping you from the ability to do this? So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mentioned the hiking piece. So as I'm continue to try and get better at what I do there, I continue to think about my equipment. The last trip that I did here a couple months ago, I brought a little scale to weigh. So it's always fun. Everyone's weighing their packs and like, who's got
Yeah.
the heaviest pack? Who's got the lightest pack? And I think mine was 48 and a half pounds. And I'm looking through the stuff and the guides working with me say, yeah, you could shave, 8 ounces here by getting a different harness.
Mm.
This
Mhm.
rain jacket that you have, oh man, that's way too
Mhm.
heavy. You could get a different one. And my backpack is an old backpack, and I could probably shave a good half pound by getting a more modern backpack. So to me, I think that's fun. It's like, how can I
Mhm.
make little improvements in my gear? How can I
Yeah.
think about the shoes that I'm wearing and shave a few ounces here? Because over a long hike, a few ounces adds up to a lot of weight, and carrying an
Yeah.
extra pound on your back adds up over
Yeah.
a multi-day trip. So to me,
Yeah.
that's fun. And I don't really think anybody is ever a master at anything, because I think there's always another layer that you can
Mhm.
go to. Even the Jordans and the Kobe's and the Tiger Woods. I mean, there's always something more that they can do. And so, um, anyway, I think I could
But
talk forever about that as well,
yeah,
like you can.
no,
But
it's never ending, but it also is really makes it really easy to spot a beginner, right? So if you congregate with a bunch of folks who are going on this hike together and you've got, you know, everybody who's been doing this for a while, you know each other, you're weighing your packs, and you got this one dude that has Crocs on and, like it's just very easy to spot someone who hasn't dedicated the resources to making this the the best experience possible for themselves. And so I mean it's easy. It's easy to spot somebody who shows up, green to CrossFit, right? But the great thing, like what you're saying, is that if they want it, it's possible for anyone to master it. And I have a girl that I started training in the beginning of this year. She was over 350 pounds when she first started with me. And I would, one of my first workouts with her, I put like a 10-pound weighted ball on top of like a 20-inch box. And she would take it from that 20-inch box and press it overhead. And she couldn't do that for more than 30 seconds. And, we were doing step ups onto like a 25-pound plate. So maybe a couple inches step ups. She couldn't do that for more than 30 seconds. She couldn't get into the rower and reach and grab the rower handles herself. Like I had to pull the handle back and hand it to her in order for her to grab the handles and start rowing. And, and she's just absolutely one of my most favorite people in the whole world. But even then, like coming in, it was just like she has so much opportunity. I hope we can make it to the point where she believes that for herself as well. And so fast forward now, 9 months later, and she is deadlifting over 200 pounds, and she's snatching and clean and jerking, and it's gorgeous. When she moves, it's so fun to watch her. She's now stepping up on 16-inch boxes, not 2-inch plates, and in and out of the rower, of course. And she's lost maybe 30 pounds, but of course, some of that's been gaining muscle. So along like the whole weight loss experience has been well more, or fat loss experience for her has been well more than 30 pounds, but just the confidence and the changes in her. So, is she a master compared to, other people in the gym that you might put her next to? Maybe not. But is she a master? Has she mastered so many things since the time that she started? Yes, absolutely. And so it's that she's put her time and energy toward it, and bought some shoes and just done some things along the way to help her continue to improve. And so, yeah, I love that part for folks, and the idea of mastery is something that I think if somebody's passionate about it and they want to do it, and they can find a sustainable way to accomplish it, then it's pretty much possible. Maybe not at the professional level, but
Right. Yeah.
in
So,
the
I mean, she's
everyday life
essentially
level.
on a path, and it sounds like it's a practice now, and that she's made that shift from something that I feel like I have to do to something that I look forward to do.
Hmm.
And it sounds like she's got a great coach as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And something that she believes she can do. And that's been the biggest shift, is just
Yeah.
what she sees about herself and what she believes about herself. So it's been so great
Great.
to watch her
Well,
change.
we may have to do a part two because I've got a lot more questions that I
You've
want to
got,
ask you. And I know we got to be wrapping up here.
yeah,
So
yeah.
let's just finish with a couple things. So, one is let's get to where you are today. So, I
Mhm.
mentioned we're going to go chronological. I think for the most part, we've stuck with that. But where are you today? What are you doing in the industry today?
Today, I work with Alpha Architect as the VP of Brand Partnerships, and what that means is I the original concept when I first started with Alpha Architect was, we know you're good with people and you know a lot of advisors, and so um, just we'll figure this out. We like you. We want to have you here. We think we've got, we think the long term is going to be a good fit. Let's just figure out the short term. And Ryan Curlin and I were laughing about it the other day. Like, we didn't know what my role was here and what it was going to be. And yet at the same time, it was just talk to people and let's see where we go from here. So, what that's turned into though is we have sev- a long list of advisors that we were working with, and it's some that we've added over the past year, that we help them build model portfolios and implement them with their clients, and do it in a different way than a lot of shops do, because we have a passion about educating people and helping advisors and their clients understand and know what they own inside their portfolio and why they own it. It's the characteristics, not just looking at the back test, but like what 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 are the qualities of the things that you own, and why would we believe that those things are going to turn into potential future returns, right? And kind of going back to, like, if somebody sends me a video of a lift, right, that they're doing, and they say, okay, what's wrong with my lift? Why, I'm trying to get heavier with my clean. Will you look at my clean? Sure. Send me a video. Send me a video. I'm looking at their clean, and I'm looking for the ways that they could improve their clean, and what do they need to change? What do they need to go back and maybe, instead of doing this, let's do that instead, or try adjusting this. And I'm doing that not because I believe in this necessarily immediately going to have an effect, but because of what I know in the overall sport of fitness, and specifically in that movement, adjusting this instead of coming up on your toes too soon. Let's wait. Let's stay back, shift your weight back in your heels, or um, I can make those suggestions. So all those all those things are pretty much, they apply directly to what the really smart quant guys do at our firm, is they take a portfolio and they look at it and they go, okay, like, this is, an advisor may not feel like it's working in this environment specifically, and they'll give some ideas and suggestions about ways that they can strengthen that portfolio from a characteristic standpoint going forward. Um, and of course, that's not my background at all from a finance standpoint, but I understand it so well from a fitness standpoint and believe in it so much because of the 13 years that I've spent seeing this work in fitness, that when you improve the characteristics of something and provide, strengthen something on the fundamental level, right, that we were talking about earlier, and that gives it the opportunity to be more sustainable over the long term and to, potentially outperform what the original trajectory was in the long term. And so it took, over this year of learning them and trusting them and also benefiting from being around all that they know about finance, and seeing what they have done for advisors in the past and advisors that we've brought on. It's now just, I mean, maybe I'm just a evangelist. I don't know, in my role as like, hey, if for somebody who needs that, wants that, is looking for more confidence in what they're doing with their investments for their clients, it's like, please, like, just let me make this introduction. And then I'm also a part of um, facilitating that long-term relationship of like just checking in with them. How are things going? That whole psychology aspect of making sure that the things that we're putting in front of them are immediately meaningful, that they evoke good feelings, that people want to read what we're putting out and what we're passing along to advisors. All of that kind of aspect of our business and our brand is what I focus on. And then I've actually had the fortunate opportunity to partner with some larger finance organizations, and facilitate those partnerships between our firm, like with Onyx, Desarte and Emlyn, and those folks over there really have enjoyed that. And Altruist, working with Jason Wink and them, through the catalyst for that was our Onyx partnership, and then with Brian Portnoy at Shaping Wealth and some other folks. And I enjoyed that because I feel like that extends my opportunity to reach advisors even further, because I'm working with people who are working with advisors, and there's a lot of synergy there. And I say not just service, but there's a different relationship when you're working with someone who is taking who is needing your services and you're providing those services directly to them, versus when you're working with peers in the industry on a level that everyone's trying to make it better for all of the people that we serve. And that type of relationship is super fun for me. So I've it took a minute to kind of figure out what I was doing there, but it's been a great fit, and I absolutely love what we're doing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up with 2 rapid fire questions. But before I get to those 2 questions, what's the best way for folks to connect with you? I know you're a great follow on Twitter, but how do you want people to connect with you?
I do love Twitter, and we were talking about this earlier. I love it for the fact that you can um, just jump in and see what people think about the world and how it's affecting them, and jump back out and go on with life and business and whatnot. But I have found just some of my best friends through Twitter. So I love Twitter. I'm there. I don't have my DMs open because people get crazy. So if you aren't friends with me on Twitter and you're looking to find me elsewhere, if you go to alphaarchitect.com, I have a couple other different ways that you can connect with me, either through email or through, I think maybe my LinkedIn is on there as well. And so if you go to alphaarchitect.com and then the tab where it says our team, I'm on there, and you can find a way there to connect with me.
All right. So a couple final questions here. The first one is, let's say that you are giving a presentation to a room full of new financial advisors who have a 30 or 40-year career ahead of them. What's the one piece of advice, words of wisdom that you would be sharing with that group?
Uh, it's it's easy to answer this, and the reason I hesitate is because I want to make sure that I stop and give, or just throw back some gratitude, for the folks who have said this to me along the way, which is be lean into who you are and bring your strengths to this industry, because the industry has a place for it. Um, and so for folks who've already chosen financial advisor as their path, there are still so many different ways that you can connect with clients, whether it's through Zoom or in person. There's a lot of folks in the industry now that are creating one to many products, right? So if you like being someone who kind of hides is not right, but who's who works behind the scenes to create a product that is shippable, and on demand for many people, and your people that you care about in this industry, or maybe some folks that wouldn't need that one-on-one relationship. There's so many possibilities in the way that you can connect with an audience. Number two, and I know you said one, but along those lines is the audience of people that you connect with, lean into who truly it is an enjoyable person for you to work with, because all of this, just be true to yourself. Like, the whole theme behind it is, as you map out this career for yourself, um, be true to who you are and let that guide you into the next piece of your journey. Because as a financial advisor, you will be the most successful the more authentic you are for the long term. And that's more sustainable as well. So that just don't let go of who you are in order to chase a dollar sign, in order to chase an income status. Just keep trusting that who you are is the right person to bring, and keep moving forward with that. So that'd be my inspirational, very psychology um, uh,
All
gift
right. Well,
to
wise
advisors.
words and deeds there. All right. Well, let's wrap with one final question, and let's flash forward 40 years from now. Let's say you're about 80 years old ish, and you're giving advice to your 40-year-old self. So, what would your 80-year-old self be telling your 40-year-old self?
This is this is a scary question for me, um, because the I hope the 80-year-old version of Jess is a lot more patient. um, and and I think what and just and forgiving, and just appreciative of who people are, and where they're at. And so I imagine that the 80-year-old person, or 80-year-old Jess, is going to look back and go, "You're doing fine," even though I don't always feel like I'm doing fine. So I, you know, I think that about myself. Give yourself credit, give yourself space, give yourself, be more appreciative. And even though I go through this and say, "Hey, this is the work that I'm doing in the gym," that's why I say the gym is so helpful for my real life, because it's almost like that creeps in and going, "Okay, you're giving yourself space to meet yourself where you are, and to be grateful for what you're capable of, what your body's capable of in the gym." Don't you think we could bring a little bit of that over to the rest of the day too? And give yourself some space to be where you are today, and to be, grateful for what you accomplished today. And so I feel really sure that my 80-year-old self is going to look back and go, "Girl, you're doing good. Just keep going, and be proud of where you are, and how far you've come." So
All right. Well, I think that is a great place to end today. And as I said earlier, Jess, I think this has just been a gift. So I
thank you.
appreciate you
Amy.
with all the wise words that you've shared here, and just opening up about your story and your journey. And it continues. And I
It
am
continues.
excited to to watch how things develop for you in the ensuing years. So again, thank you for being on
Yeah.
the show. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. It's been so enjoyable. Thank you for you've been an incredible host. So thank you for all your questions and for the meaning behind them.
Thank you. Appreciate that.